Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. Patch 9.1 has had yet another update, and in this video we're going to be talking about some of the buffs classes are getting. Not all these are just good buffs, some of them are nerfs, primarily when it comes to the PvP side of the game, but you might be very happy to hear about some of them. While not every single overpowered or underpowered spec is being addressed in this update, there are some still good changes. We also get some changes to some of the dungeons and how you'll be playing with them in Mythic Plus in 9.1. Overall, pretty decent changes in order to make some of your dungeon runs easier, particularly with some of the more troubling and annoying affixes to work with. And a reminder, most of you guys watching the videos are not even subscribed. Just hit the sub button, hit the bell to get more 9.1 updates from the channel. Anyway, let's get into the video. Starting off, we're going to be talking about the AoE changes. The AoE caps is one of the biggest updates in 9.1. Finally, classes are no longer going to be completely capped on AoE. While not every single class and spec on this list, primarily Outlaw Rogue, is seeing some of those buffs, there's a variety of different specs and playstyles that are. And so far, this is where Blizzard has them currently. In the 5 target soft cap, that means you'll still do maximum damage to those 5 targets and reduce damage beyond, but still be able to hit and affect every single enemy in an AoE trash pack. Glaive Tempest for Demon Hunters and Spinning Crane Kick for Monks, yes, Spinning Crane Kick, is getting uncapped. This is good for Mistweavers, this is good for Brewmasters, and insane for Windwalkers because these guys do so much damage with Spinning Crane Kick. In the trash pack of like 20 mobs, even though they're capped, they'll still do 80,000 damage, and that's their capped damage. I am expecting some kind of a nerf to Spinning Crane Kick at some point, because if this goes live as is, monks are just going to be all over the place. Actual uncapped madness and a real monster to tackle. For the other abilities that are going to be at an 8 target soft cap, as in they do maximum damage to 8 targets and reduce beyond that, Sacrificial Pact, Consumption, Bone Storm, Burst and Swords, Reanimated Shambler for Death Knight, Fell Barrage for Demon Hunter, Barrage for both Marksman and Beast Mastery, Arcane Echo, the talented version for Arcane, and Frozen Orb Baseline for Frost. And just like they promised, Fury Warriors and Arms Warriors Blaze Storm is going to be 8 target soft cap, with Warlock Felguard's Demonology Fellstorm is soft cap, Assassin Rogues and Subtlety also 8 target soft cap. Again, nothing on Outlaw Rogue, the AoE rogue spec. And while these aren't hard uncaps, soft caps are a much better scenario. They haven't characters capped in AoE, and a few specs might even see more of an increase from value from these abilities being soft cap, like Arms Warriors, for example, and Assassination Rogues. Arms Warriors Blade Storm will leave a Mastery Bleed on enemies. That Mastery Bleed will tick separately on each and every enemy. That's more damage besides just your Blade Storm affecting more targets. Or Assassination Rogues, when they use Phantom Knives out of stealth, they'll poison every enemy they touch. Deadly Poison taken on every single enemy. Grab a couple Conduits and Talons to buff the poison damage, and you're gonna see some real damage increases. It's like a ripple effect. Not all specs are given it, but it's gonna be impressive to see which specs are gonna come out on top and how the meta will change forward in Shadowlands in Mythic Pluses. Next, we have some class buffs as well as legendary tuning and a lot of bug fixes. Death Knight Abomination Limb, the legendary effect, which I don't really see a lot of people run, will now apply a 10% damage debuff to enemies every time he damages an enemy with Abomination Limb. Previously, you had to grip an enemy with it. Just gonna make this legendary more consistent, and I'm wondering if the numbers will allow it to be somewhat played. For Feral Druids, we actually have seen a lot of bugs getting fixed, with Adaptive Swarm benefiting from Tiger's Fury, fixed nature that prevented certain ranks of Carnivorous Instant Conduit from improving auto attack and periodic damage while Tiger's Fury bonus is active, and fixed an issue that prevented Carnivorous Instinct to interact with thrash damage increases as well as Feral Frenzy increases. So Ferals are probably going to see a little bit extra bleed damage increase. They're also playing around with a Hunter Necrolord ability, Death Chakram, which is a chakram that bounces between multiple enemies. They're also applying a debuff with this ability where you and your pet will be able to do 10% more damage to that target, which hopefully will make Necrolord ability a little bit better. Last time I checked on PTR, it only worked on your primary target, but if you can debuff multiple enemies and if they can get it to bounce a lot more consistently on multiple targets, this could be somewhat of an AoE single target improvement in damage output. And probably the craziest change ever, the Windwalker Spinning Crane Kick rank 2 effect that increases Spinning Crane Kick damage is now going to be up to 18% instead of 15% for each unique target struck with Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm, and Rising Sun for 20 seconds. But it now only stacks to 5 times instead of 6. Essentially, the maximum damage of the stacks of Spinning Crane Kick didn't change, but it's a lot easier to get that max because you have to tag one less target. With the uncapped potential of monks, we're probably going to be seeing a monk dominance in Mythic Pluses for years to come, unless we see some sort of crazy nerfs to the baseline ability or any of the conduits, because there's even a conduit that buffs the damage of spin and crane kick. I'm really interested to see what Blizzard is trying to do with monks, but it looks like monk stocks for Windwalker, for Mythic Pluses in particular, are going way up. It's going to be much easier for you to deal max damage, and now that you can affect every single target, nothing, and I repeat, nothing is going to be safe from a Bone Dust Brew AoE burst combo. For PvP, we got some class changes, like Adaptive Swarm healing capability of healing over time is reduced to 20% in PvP instead of 25%. This is going to be a slight nerf for Restoration Druids, obviously, but this is also a nerf to Feral Druid and Boomkin Druid off healing, because using Adaptive Swarm on themselves, going into bear form, press it Frenzied Regen like their Guardian Druid, and healing for the full health bar, yeah, that can be pretty annoying sometimes. So that's also getting nerfed as well. Holy Priests are seeing the healing increase for Heal, Flash Heal, and Renew. And playing with the Holy Priest myself, I noticed that their burst healing is actually kind of okay, but the regular support spells for basic healing PvP are pretty low in value. So probably is going to be a pretty decent buff for Holy Priest overall. Warriors Elysian Might Legendary critical strike damage bonus reduced by 10% in PvP, which is going to cut some of the power out of the warrior burst, especially while they have you pinned in an unbreakable route, unless you have an immunity or a Cloak of Shadows. Next, we got some nerfs to the affixes of Mythic Plus going into 9.1.5, which will hopefully make some of your 15 runs or 20s a little bit easier. Starting off with bolstering. It will no longer bolster permanently. It'll now only last 20 seconds. So in a Mythic Plus, if you end up hitting the wrong target, you only have to wait 20 seconds until the bolstering stacks fall off. This is going to require a little bit less coordination from the rest of the party, especially if you got them all in LFG pugs, to just focus down a singular target. Even if you make the mistake of hitting the wrong target and you bolster a boss or you bolster an ad, at least the buff won't last permanently until you kill it or you wipe. It looks like Raging Affix is also getting nerfed, with Raging becoming a 50% damage buff for an enemy when they drop below 30% health, which is lower than a 70% damage increase that they currently have right now. So this means your tank is going to get beat up a lot less, and if, let's say in pugs, you just can't find somebody to de-enrage mobs, at least that Raging will not completely roll over your tank. Necrotic is another affix that tanks have a hard time dealing with, so they're actually changing its duration from a 9-second duration Necrotic to a 6, which will still mean it's a deadly affix, and if you're a carrion tank, you probably have an advantage against dealing with it with the Sippy Cup. But if your group is lacking on slows or any immobilization routes, then this change will at least make it a little bit easier for tanks to throw off necrotic wounds. It still is going to make necrotic hard to deal with, and that's definitely one of the least favorite affixes for tanks all around. But overall, with these changes and nerfs, it does seem like the game is going to be a little bit more playable, to make it easier for people just to get their keys done. Whether you do casual keys from like level 5s to maybe 10s, pushing 15s just for the weekly vault loot, or pushing for 20s and higher just for that M+ score, whatever way you play the game, making affixes a little bit easier to deal with means players can have a little bit more fun and a little bit less time worrying about how to deal with every single one of these affixes. Overall, a variety of different updates in 9.1.5 so far, and probably going to cover the next week if we have any other big changes. I'm still hoping for some big class updates, primarily if we can get any kind of buffs to some of the less represented specs in the game. We don't really know when 9.1.5 is going to be out, so maybe it might be a little too late to ask for any kind of big class reworks, but potentially if they can buff some of the less performing, less represented, less played specs in the game, I think that's something that a lot of players will be happy to see. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Let me know what you think about the updates. Like the 9.1.5 updates on regular, subscribe to the channel. I told you about it earlier, but you could do that as well. Like the video if you enjoyed it, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, I'll see all of you in the next video.